Shalom. This video is 13 reasons why you should have a sukkah. First, a joke. Fella lives in an apartment building and wants to put up the sukkah on the building, and the only place to do it is the roof. So he goes up to the roof and erects his sukkah. The owner says, "What's that disgusting little hut on my roof of my building?" Man explains it. He says, "I'm sorry, take it down." So I can't, it's a mitzvah. "Well, I'm taking you to landlord-tenant court." So they go to a landlord-tenant court and they appear before Judge Goldstein, who asks what the situation is. Each side presents their case. The judge says, "Fella, it's not your building. You can't put up a sukkah up there. I order you to take it down and give you 10 days to do it." Okay, so now why do we have a sukkah? Well, first of all, the Torah commands it in Leviticus 23 and other places. Sukkah Jewu, you have to dwell in a sukkah during the festival. Number two, the Talmud has an opinion that the sukkah actually were heavenly clouds that accompanied Israel and gave them comfort during their journey. By dwelling in a sukkah today, we remind ourselves of our ancestors experiencing comfort from these clouds of glory and feeling God's presence. Third, we're a bit anxious during Yom Kippur that perhaps our judgment didn't go according to plan, and so God says, fulfill another mitzvah, dwell in my sukkah, and you'll feel comforted that everything went fine. It's important to note that, fourth, that Sukkot is symmetrical with Pesach in terms of the year. If you divide the year into two halves, the first month of each half of the year, in the middle of that month, we have a week-long festival, according to the Torah. One is Pesach, one is Sukkot, with exactly the same idea, that you should remember the exodus from Egypt, that you should remember what it's like to be slaves, and you should not oppress anyone else. And so by living in a fragile hut, as much as we can during this week, we remind ourselves of that point. Fifth, one of the ways that we experience God is through nature. The Bible, the mitzvot, and certainly through nature. And we have prayers in our service like Ma'ariv Aravim, which talks about God and nature. But Sukkot is the main experience for people who live so far removed from nature nowadays to have an experience experiencing the wonders of the universe, which leads to a wonder of God and a celebration of God. Sixth, in the Bible, it's clear that Sukkot is a harvest festival also. And as we bring in our harvest, we're tending to be a little bit arrogant and haughty, which are very dangerous anti-religious feelings. Just like at Pesach, the mystics said that when you remove the chametz from your house, it's a metaphor for removing the arrogance from your soul. So too, by putting ourselves in a fragile hut for the week, we have an opportunity to remove the arrogance out of our lives from our great harvest. And even though we're not farmers today, most of us, we still can experience that same haughtiness and have to be reminded at least twice a year. Seven, the almost paradoxical statement of the Torah, Sukkah Jewu, that you have to dwell in a temporary shelter, reminds us of the duality of life, of the fragility of life, and also of living. And living with a sense of the fragility of life is helpful in terms of making this life more valuable. 8, we dwell in a sukkah in the fall, and in the northern hemisphere that's tougher than a spring festival. And so by putting the festival in the fall and by us fulfilling that mitzvah, we show our extra devotion and love to God, because the weather isn't always very nice, and we still go ahead and do it. Although the halacha says that if it's terrible out, you don't have to be out, you just make kiddush and then go inside. Number 9, the Torah reading during Shabbat Hagadol is chapter 33 of Exodus, right after the golden calf story. And the Midrash says that God withdrew after that sin, and Moses went up to plead for Israel and came down on Yom Kippur with the rules to build the tabernacle, which they proceeded to do so until Sukkot. And so by spending time from Yom Kippur to Sukkot, building our own hut, we are reminded of our ancestors' devotion. And the Midrash says God's then Shekhinah returned to Israel, His presence returned to Israel, and so we feel God's presence by living in the sukkah. Number 11, it's great fun to live in a sukkah, to build a sukkah. It was the greatest thing I did as a kid with my dad, and everybody in the neighborhood wanted to be Jewish and come and build a sukkah. It's a lot of fun. And 12, there's nothing quite like entertaining friends in a sukkah. It's really a fun experience and family. It really makes a great community event. And if you're a former Christmas celebrator, you use evergreen for the schach on top, and you can get your fix that way. But finally, there's a messianic dimension to this too. The Haftorah for the first day of Sukkot is from Zechariah, the end of Zechariah, where he has the sentence that ends all of our prayers. There will come a time when all nations will recognize Adonai as God. And the context of that Haftorah is that at the end of the great battles, at the end of time, all nations will come to Jerusalem on Sukkot and recognize God. And the main sentence that we say during Sukkot, during our grace after meals, is Harachaman hu yakim lanu Sukkat David hanofelet. Please God, raise up again the fallen Sukkah of David. King David, obviously, referring to, and that's a messianic allusion to a glorious future. And so Sukkot has that messianic, futuristic element of a better time. The many reasons for having a Sukkah.